What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. So today we are going to do another Battle World book or Warzone book. Battle World or Warzone was a way for Marvel to do tie-ins to the Secret Wars event they had back in 2015. Because remember, when Doctor Doom became God Doom, he was able to make a new Earth. Except he called this new Earth Battle World. Now with this new Earth, what he did was he was able to make Battle World off the fragments of different universes from the multiverse. Now on top of that, it was also a way for Marvel to kind of redo some of the famous storylines about their characters they have done over the years. For example, Planet Hulk was redone. So was Age of Apocalypse. A lot of stories were done all over again as a way for Marvel to make more money. Now, all of the books were like that because this one is all about Civil War. And so with this book, it was really a way for Marvel to redo the big event that really reshaped Marvel and actually brought a lot of old fans back into comics and new fans as well, since Marvel was slowly recovering after the horrible period of comics better known as the 90s. So Civil War was also big because you had two of the biggest Avengers fighting against one another. Now this one is more the idea, what would happen if the Civil War never had ended? What if the war had continued on forever? This is what the Civil War comic was all about. And we are going to see what happened if the war had never ended, because honestly, it is very interesting. And so getting into today's video, we actually pick up 6 years in the past, where we actually pick up with somebody telling us how we got from this point right here to a future point where the Civil War never ended. And what I mean is that we actually pick up in Project 42. Now, Project 42 is basically a prison that Iron Man made. Now, the reason why Iron Man made this prison as a way to hold on to superheroes that had picked Captain America's side in the war. Now, if you're wondering how in the world did Captain America and Iron Man get into this war, let me explain. So there were a bunch of rookie superheroes that went after a certain villain, and that villain just killed off a bunch of people. And of course, that made the American government mad, and so they made a law. If you are going to be a superhero, you must register under their law. Now, of course, Iron Man liked the idea of this law because he feels like heroes should be watched over. But of course, Steve Rogers hated the idea because he loved the idea that this was a free country. And with that law, the heroes were no longer free to work. And so, of course, it led into a big war. Now, getting back into Project 42, the prison that Iron Man made, he made this prison as a way to hold on to people who had picked Steve Rogers' side. And so Steve Rogers and his forces came to this prison to break out everyone who was basically being held inside this prison. And you have Iron Man and his forces fighting against Steve Rogers and his forces because Iron Man wants to make sure that his prisoners stay as prisoners. But that is the moment we actually do jump over to Black Panther. Now this is huge, and the reason why, because when it comes to Black Panther in the original Civil War, he wasn't part of it. Matter of fact, he was neutral. He stayed in Wakanda. But on top of that as well, when it came to Civil War, the first one, he only had one tie-in. And that one tie-in was him and Storm's wedding, and that was it. And so with that being said though, to see him right now fighting in this war is actually pretty surprising. But of course, he did pick Steve Rogers' side. Now right now, you do have Black Panther trying to hack into the system that belongs to Iron Man to free the rest of the prisoners. But here comes the big problem though. You have Black Panther tell us and Dagger that apparently Iron Man has set off the self-destruct meaning that this entire facility is about to blow up. And so you have Black Panther tell Dagger to run and go warn the others. Now, at the same time, Iron Man gets a call from Maria Hill, and you have Maria Hill tell Iron Man that apparently Black Panther was the one that has set off the self-destruct system of this facility to kill everyone. And so now the big question is, who did what? But either way, you do have all the heroes just run into Cloak as a way to teleport out of that place before they all die. Now, of course, all of the heroes were lucky enough to basically get through Cloak to get out of that facility before it blew up. But here comes the big problem though. When it comes to Cloak powers, he basically opens up two portals, where you're coming from and where you're going to. And so with the facility blowing up, all of that energy went through one portal and out the other. And so even though all of the heroes were able to get out of Cloak and actually fly all over St. Louis, that is the moment all of that energy just comes out of Cloak. And of course, it makes a huge long crater right in the middle of St. Louis, just causing havoc all over the place and killing millions of people, including some of the heroes as well. But with that incident right there, that was basically the moment you had the country divided in two, where of course one side was Iron Man's side and the other side is Captain America's side. And when it comes to Iron Man's side, his side is called the Iron. And when it comes to Captain America's side, his side is called the Blue. But the crater that's right in the middle of St. Louis, that is the border between the two new nations. So America is no longer America. It's now two nations where America used to stand. And so we finally reach the present day, where of course we see how the two countries are living in the present day. And we start off in the Iron, the country that belongs to Iron Man. And with that being said, we do pick up with a young girl right now who apparently just learned that she has powers. And right now she is flying all over the place. But she is actually stopped by Carol Danvers and a bunch of random Iron Man people. Now with that being said, you do have Carol Danvers tell her that it is a great thing that she does have the ability to actually fly, but of course in the Iron you must come over to Iron Man and register under his law, because even though you have superpowers, you still must register under Iron Man's country. And so of course they're going to take her away and also train her and basically help her learn how to control her powers, because she lives in the Iron. But then we jump over to the Blue, the country that belongs to Captain America. Now, of course, this is the moment we learn how things work in this country, where if your powers activate, like this young boy, I want to say it is a boy, when his powers activate, he's really excited about it. But that is the moment he is confronted by Cassie Lang, the daughter of Scott Lang, the second Ant-Man. But you have Cassie tell this young boy that with his powers activating, it is a great thing. She basically tells him like, hey, I hope you do use your powers for good, not bad. But then she walks away. Like there is no like, hey, you got powers, you must come with me and be trained. It's more of like, hey, you're free. Use your powers the way you want to. We're just hoping that when it comes to using your powers, you will use your powers for good and not bad. But that is the moment we actually pick up in the divide. Now, of course, the divide is where the two nations are divided at, the huge crater in St. Louis. Now, the reason why we pick up here is because we actually pick up with a character known as Miriam Sharp. Now, Miriam Sharp is going to be very important for this storyline, but she only appears in the first chapter, and that is it. And the reason why, because right now, she is trying to bring both nations together, because remember, After Project 42 blew up, it has been 6 years since. And with the 6 years past, it's her saying that she knows that both men want to end this war, that both men want to bring the two nations together as one nation, because both nations are having different difficulties thanks to the other nation. And so she's hoping that with her having Tony Stark and Steve Rogers here and to have a conversation, she can hopefully have both men agree that this war should finally end. But when both men arrive at this meeting, we begin the process of actually figuring out who is on whose side. And what I mean is that we actually pick up with both men arriving at this meeting and come to find out who is the right-hand person. So for Steve Rogers, it is Peter Parker, Spider-Man. And for Tony Stark, it is actually She-Hulk. Now, I do want to mention one more thing for She-Hulk and Tony Stark, because in this universe, in this storyline, these two characters are dating one another. Even though She-Hulk is Tony Stark's best guard, she still is dating Tony Stark. And I have no idea why that bothers me for her character, but either way, they are dating one another. But of course, both men do arrive at this meeting to hopefully end this war. Now, we do learn a few more things, like, for example, Marion Sharp is actually a close friend of She-Hulk. And so when they arrive at the meeting, we do see that Marion Sharp run up to give She-Hulk a hug. Now, again, like I said, Marion Sharp is going to be very important for this storyline. Now, we also come to find out that Peter Parker and Mary Jane, like in the original Civil War, they were married, except in this one, they also had a child. Now, with that being said, remember, Peter Parker chose the side of the blue, Captain America's side, but Mary Jane and their child is on Iron Man's side, meaning that there's only times or certain times that Peter Parker is able to actually see his daughter, which is very crucial for this storyline, because that is his motivation for this war to end, so that he can finally be with his wife and child again. But of course, you do have both men go inside to begin the meeting. Now, when the meeting begins, of course, you do have both men sit down with Marion Sharp, and you do have both men explain why the war should end. But at the same time, they also tell the other side why this war has hurt them thanks to the other side, like what the other side is doing to affect their country. And so with that, you do have both men once again continue to argue. And this is something I want to bring up when it comes to Marvel Comics, because anytime you have a Steve Rogers and Tony Stark argument, these two men can never just get along. I mean, there are moments they do get along and they do work together, but there are a lot more moments where these two guys do get on each other's nerves. And so, of course, while you're having this meeting and you have both people explain what's going on in their country and how the other country is affecting their country, of course, both men are not listening to one another and, of course, just continue to argue with one another, which, of course, does lead into a very big moment. And that very big moment is when you have Marion Sharp stand up. And as soon as she stands up, that is the moment she is shot and killed right there. Now, with the death of Marion Sharp, it is basically the moment you had the story tell us that this war is not going to end. And the reason why I say that is because right after she is shot and killed, you do have Steve Rogers tell Peter Parker to look around for a sniper. And of course, when Peter Parker finds a sniper, he does tell Steve Rogers he found a sniper, but here comes the big problem. There's nobody there with the gun, meaning that the shooter got away. Now, this leads into another problem, because that is the moment you have Steve Rogers kind of tell us that he believes that this was Tony Stark's fault, or that Tony Stark was trying to kill him, or one of the many factions in Tony Stark's country was trying to kill Steve Rogers. And the reason why Steve Rogers is saying all of this is because when Marion Sharp stand up, she was basically blocking the shooter's view, meaning that the target was not Marion Sharp. The target was actually Steve Rogers. And so that means when she stood up, she basically took the bullet on accident because Steve Rogers was the target. And so now Steve Rogers feels like that Tony Stark was plotting something, or somebody who was working for Tony Stark was plotting something and trying to kill Steve Rogers. And so you have both men walk away and letting us know that this war is going to continue on. But getting into the second chapter of this storyline, we actually pick up in the blue, and we actually pick up with a drone. Now, this drone belongs to Tony Stark, and the reason why he has a drone flying over the blue is because right now he is trying to gather clues that could possibly tell him who killed Marion Sharp. That right there is very important. Who killed Marion Sharp? That is why he has this drone flying over the blue, because he knows he is not welcome in the blue. But that is the moment you have the drone actually run into Storm, letting us know that Storm had chose Steve Rogers' side. And that is the moment you have Storm use her powers on the drone to get rid of it. But of course, we know she is going to take the drone over to the blue side to show everyone that Tony Stark was basically spying on the blue. Well, actually, we do see Storm take the drone over to Colossus, also telling us that Colossus had chose Steve Rogers' side. Now, of course, with her bringing the drone over to Colossus, you do have Colossus being able to take the brain out of the drone. And when I say brain, I really mean the hard drive that stores all the information on the drone. And so, of course, you do have Colossus tell Storm to take the brain over to Steve Rogers to let Steve Rogers know that Tony Stark was basically spying on the blue, while you have Colossus take the rest of the drone over to Magneto to also let us know that Magneto had chose Steve Rogers' side. But either way, of course, now the blue knows what Tony Stark was trying to do in their country. And so getting over to the Iron, we actually do pick up with Iron Man, but we also come to find out that the Winter Soldier had apparently picked Iron Man's side in the war. And matter of fact, the Winter Soldier is kind of like She-Hulk, his right-hand man, or his left-hand man, if you want to call it like that. But either way, you do have the Winter Soldier tell Iron Man that right now they do have a projectile coming towards them. And of course, the projectile is just a bunch of metal, which of course tell us that Magneto took Tony Stark's drone, made it into a ball, and threw it right back over to the Iron. And of course, you do have that huge ball hit the tower of Iron Man, but of course, there was a message on the ball, and it says next time they're going to send the Hulk to let Tony Stark know, hey, we knew about your drone. If you spy on us once again, we're going to send over a Hulk. And that is the moment you have Tony Stark actually get an idea. He's like, they're going to send a Hulk. You know what? I have an idea now. But that is the moment we actually do jump over to the blue, where we pick up with Steve Rogers and Peter Parker. Now remember, Peter Parker is the right-hand man to Steve Rogers, but right now, Peter Parker is basically a hothead. And the reason why I say that is because right now, you have Peter Parker basically telling Steve Rogers they need to go all in when it comes to this war. Because right now, it's Peter Parker saying that, listen, Tony Stark tried to kill you with that sniper, but Marion Sharp got in the way. On top of that, when it comes to Peter Parker, he's kind of like, that drone was flying around the blue to spy on us, even though Tony Stark used that drone as a way to gather more clues on who shot Miriam Sharp. But either way, though, it's Peter Parker telling Steve Rogers they need to go all in. Now, of course, Steve Rogers is not really listening, but this is the moment we come to find out that Steve Rogers and the Blue, they are developing some kind of weapon that can actually change the tide of the war over to Steve Rogers. But here's the big question, though. Not really a big question, but more the big statement, though, by Steve Rogers. Because to him, it is okay to make the weapon, but it's not okay to actually use the weapon. And that right there means a lot, because he's okay with making the weapon, but he only wants to use that weapon if he actually needs to use that weapon. Now, that is the moment we actually do jump back over to the Iron, where we pick up with Iron Man and She-Hulk right now, looking over something that Tony Stark was able to make. Now, this something is actually going to tell us something very huge about this whole comic, because that is the moment you actually have Tony Stark show She-Hulk a timeline. Now, this timeline is basically a timeline of different Marvel events that had happened in this universe. Now, they're colored by two colors, green and red. And the green are the ones that Tony Stark knew could have happened sooner or later. But the red ones, those are the ones that Tony Stark did not see coming. The ones that seem very unlikable to happen. And so with this timeline, it basically tells She-Hulk and Tony Stark when it comes to the war, they have been played. But the question is, though, by who? But that is the moment we actually do jump over to Hank McCoy, Steve Rogers, and Peter Parker. Now, this is very important. And the reason why, because you have Hank McCoy showing off his new project, Project Bell Curve. Now, with Project Bell Curve, it has the ability to take away people's powers. And that right there is very huge. Now, you do have Beast show off his new project by using Sandman for an example, because you do have Sandman right now in a testing tube. And then you have Hank McCoy turn on the project to show everyone how it works, where of course we do see Sandman become a regular human being, no longer having his powers. And so with that happening, you then have Beast tell Steve Rogers that he'll be able to make a bigger version so that they can use that on the Iron. But here comes the problem, though. He needs more materials to make a bigger version. But all the materials he need, well, of course, right now, they're in the Iron. And so that means that Steve Rogers must send in a team into the Iron to get the materials that Hank McCoy needs to make a bigger version of Project Bell Curve. And so, of course, that is the moment we actually do see Spider-Man putting together a team to sneak into the Iron to get the material that Hank McCoy's need. Now, on his team, you have Venom, Elektra, and a character I never heard of named Azari. But right now, you have all four of them breaking into the country of the Iron to get materials for Hank McCoy. Now, Peter Parker is not the only one trying to sneak into another country, because that is the moment we see She-Hulk in her regular human form trying to sneak into the Blue. But of course, she's going there because Tony Stark needs her to gather more information to figure out who is trying to play both sides. Now, with that being said, though, with She-Hulk trying to get into the Blue in her regular human form, that is the moment she is stopped by the guards at the gate. And of course, they want to make sure that she's not somebody from the Iron. Now, she does lie to them and tell them that she is here to be a lawyer for somebody in the Blue. And of course, they do believe her at first. But to make sure that she is not no spy, they do bring somebody else who can read her mind to figure out if she's lying or not. And that person is no other than Charles Xavier. Now, as we get into the third chapter of this storyline, we actually do pick up with Spider-Man's team still trying to sneak into the Iron. Now, here comes the big problem, though. As they're trying to sneak into the Iron, they are met by some Sentinels that Iron Man had made. And of course, they begin the process of actually attacking Spider-Man and his teammates. Now, this battle does last for like 2 to 3 pages. But of course, there is a death in this battle, and that death is Elektra. Elektra died in the battle, and that is huge right there. But either way, you have Spider-Man remind his team that they came here for a certain mission, and so they must push on even though Elektra was killed in this mission. But getting back over to She-Hulk, let's not forget that she was trying to get into the blue by pretending that she is a lawyer trying to meet up with a certain client. But here comes the big problem though. They sent out Charles Xavier to read her mind. But luckily for She-Hulk, Charles Xavier is not as powerful as he used to be because over time he had grown older, and with him getting older, of course, he is unable to actually read her mind like he usually does when it comes to reading folks' mind in Marvel Comics, meaning that she was able to actually fool Charles Xavier because Charles actually believes that she is a lawyer here for a client. Now, this actually does lead into a conversation that happens between Tony Stark and the Winter Soldier. And the reason why I'm pointing this out, because right now you have Iron Man kind of doubting himself as a leader. And the reason why I'm saying that, because to Iron Man, he feels like with him being a futurist, meaning that he's supposed to expect things to happen in the future and prepare for them, he feels like he failed at his job because apparently he was not prepared for a country to be divided into two. He was not prepared to fight against his close friend, Steve Rogers. He was not prepared for anything at all. But of course, you do have the Winter Soldier kind of comfort Tony Stark and kind of boost him back up like, dude, listen, there is no way that you could have prepared for something like this. No one could. And so with that being said, you had to adapt. And honestly, you did an amazing job adapting to these different situations that we have been given. But getting back over to Spider-Man's team, we do see them right now looking for the materials that the Beast needs to use for the Bell Curve project. Now here comes the big problem though. That material is being guarded by no other than Kingpin. Now here comes the big twisted moment, because apparently as the war went on, Kingpin had apparently fought against Dr. Octopus, and Kingpin actually won. With that being said, Kingpin actually took the arms, the metal arms, off the back of Doc Ock and it actually attached it to himself. So Kingpin can have the arms to himself. But the problem is though, the machines have a mind of their own, and they did not like the idea of Kingpin killing Dr. Octopus. And so the arms actually basically killed Kingpin by shocking him to death. And with them doing that, he became a corpse. But the arms used the corpse as a way to have a host. But of course, Iron Man made them guard the material that Beast needs to make the Bell Curve project. And so Spider-Man and his team must fight against a dead body Kingpin who has the arms of Doc Ock. But getting back over to She-Hulk, we do see her right now still in the blue. And right now we come to find out what her mission was. Yes, it was to gather information to find out who is playing both sides. But her main target was to find Bullseye, because Bullseye is the best person who could have shot that sniper that killed Miriam Sharp. Now, when she does find Bullseye, that is the moment she's confronted by another character. And that character is Speedball. And apparently Speedball knew She-Hulk so well that even though she came into the blue in her human form with a new haircut, Speedball was able to figure out who she was, and he called up the Punishers. Now this is very important, and the reason why, because the Punishers are actually the police force of this area, the blue. And so right now She-Hulk has been made, and so sooner or later she's going to have to fight against the Punishers, the police force of Steve Rogers. But getting back over to the Iron, we do see Spider-Man's team still fighting against the Kingpin, the dead Kingpin. And this fight does last for a couple more pages, and it does look like that Spider-Man's team is about to fail. But that is the moment you do have Venom appear, being able to save Spider-Man and his teammates at the very last second by just literally destroying the body of Kingpin, which of course makes the arms useless. And so then Spider-Man and his team are able to get the material they need for Beast to finish the Bell Curve project. But getting back over to She-Hulk, we do see her right now trying to get away from the Punishers, because right now they're hunting her down. They're trying to bring her in. Now, let's also not forget that the Punishers are the police force of Steve Rogers, but this police force is being led by Frank Castle. Just in case you're wondering, it's kind of obvious, but I felt like somebody going to ask, like, is Frank Castle actually leading the Punishers? And so, yes, he is the one leading the Punishers. But either way, though, you actually do have somebody else hit She-Hulk so hard she falls into the hole. And of course, when the Punishers come looking for her, they can't find her. And now the question is, who in the world shot her that made her disappear from the Punishers? Now, we do come to find out who did take She-Hulk. How did she disappear? Apparently someone kidnapped her, and the person that had kidnapped her is no other than the Black Panther. Now, this is huge because the last time we saw the Black Panther, he was the one that told Dagger about how Project 42, the prison that Iron Man made 6 years ago, was about to blow up. But he stayed behind as a way to make sure to buy everyone some time before the bombs blew up. And so we were left to believe that he had died with the bombs. But apparently he's been alive this whole time and apparently hiding somewhere between the Blue and the Iron. And he was the one captured She-Hulk. And now the big question is, what is Black Panther actually doing? Why is he trying to make this war continue on? But getting into the 4th chapter of this book, we actually pick up with Steve Rogers, Peter Parker, and Hank McCoy, because Peter Parker's team was able to get the materials that Hank McCoy needed. And so, of course, with the material, Hank McCoy was able to make a bigger version of Project Bell Curve, meaning that this bomb could be used to depower everybody over at the Iron and, of course, let Steve Rogers win. Now, with that being said, though, at the bottom of this page, we do come to find out that in 14 hours, we're about to have one of the biggest wars in this universe. And of course, it will take place at the Divide. But that is the moment we actually jump over to the Iron, where we actually pick up with Iron Man right now talking to the Winter Soldier. And the reason why, because Iron Man is basically telling the Winter Soldier that something is going on. Someone is playing both sides. But on top of that, Iron Man is very concerned for She-Hulk. One, because in this universe, him and She-Hulk are dating, but two, because he did send She-Hulk in to go investigate the Blue, or to figure out who could possibly be playing both sides. But of course, now she's been kidnapped and Iron Man must go find her. And so with that being said, you do have Iron Man telling the Winter Soldier that right now he is in charge of the Iron until Iron Man comes back. Now, of course, once Iron Man leaves, we pick up at this point telling us that we're 10 hours away from the big war. And matter of fact, we actually do see the Blue right now getting ready for war, because you do have Steve Rogers send in the Punishers. And remember, the Punishers are basically the police force of the Blue. But right now, the Punishers are moving into the Iron territory and taking out any watchtowers that could possibly warn the Iron that the Blue is on their way. And so, of course, this means the war is coming very, very soon. But let's not forget that Black Panther had apparently kidnapped She-Hulk. And so with that being said, we actually do pick up with She-Hulk and the Black Panther. And you have She-Hulk ask Black Panther why he is doing this. Now, you do have She-Hulk thinks that he is doing this because of Wakanda. And this is the moment we come to find out that Wakanda is no longer around in this universe. But on top of that right there, that is the moment you have Black Panther tell She-Hulk he does not care for Wakanda, that he is going to have a new world for his people, new land for his people. And that line right there should give you a hint what is going on with the Black Panther. But that is the moment you do have Black Panther actually tell She-Hulk that she is not the one he wants. And matter of fact, he wants somebody else. And that somebody else is, of course, Iron Man. Because Black Panther knew if he was able to actually kidnap She-Hulk, hold her hostage, Iron Man would come after her. And that is the person that Black Panther wants. And of course, Iron Man is about to arrive at their location very soon. But with all that being said, we still have no idea why Black Panther is doing all of this for. What is the main goal for the Black Panther, and why does he want Iron Man for? But getting back over to the Blue, this is the moment we come to find out the war is about to happen. Nothing else can stop this war from happening. And with that being said, though, right now you have the Blue invading the Iron. But right before they begin the process of actually attacking the Iron, that is the moment you actually have Steve Rogers give one of his powerful speeches. Because remember, Steve Rogers is the leader of the Blue Nation. And so, of course, it makes sense for him to kind of make some kind of speech as a way to motivate everyone to fight with all they have to basically take over the Iron, because Steve Rogers still has no idea that right now both sides are being played. Only Iron Man knows that. And so for Steve Rogers, his main goal is to go ahead and to invade the Iron. And he is bringing everything he can to basically win this war. And matter of fact, he blows up the bridge that technically connects the Iron and the Blue to show that he does mean business, that he does mean to get rid of the Iron once and for all. But that is the moment we actually do see the guards of Black Panther being able to grab Iron Man and bring Iron Man over to Black Panther. Now, this is the moment we come to find out that this is not Black Panther at all. And the reason why I say that, because you do have this person who is pretending to be Black Panther begin the process of actually changing their appearance to tell us that this is some random shapeshifter. But here comes the big shocker though, because you do have Iron Man actually ask this shapeshifter, why in the world are they doing this? What in the world is going on? And this is the moment you do have this random shapeshifter tell Iron Man, hey, listen, the reason why I'm doing this because my original plan was to conquer this land, but I failed and my people left me behind with, of course, limited resources. But of course, I still want to conquer this land, but I knew I had to think of a new plan. And of course, my new plan was a war. If I'm able to get the heroes to fight against one another to the point where they could possibly kill each other, then this land will be free to conquer with no problems at all. And so, of course, that is why this shapeshifter has been playing both Tony and Steve Rogers to hopefully get to a point where both sides are killed off so that this person can finally conquer this land. But that is the moment you have Iron Man show us that apparently he has some kind of secret weapon in his suit to use that, of course, release a huge amount of energy to shock the people around him, to only find out the person who keeps changing their appearance is not Mystique. No, it is actually a Skrull. This is a Skrull invasion. And this is why I love this storyline so much, because it's Marvel combining both Civil War and the Skrull invasion into one single storyline. But of course, the Skrulls are the ones that are playing both sides because they're trying to get rid of the heroes so that they can finally conquer this land. But back on the surface, we actually do see the war has begun. The war is finally here. And with the war starting, of course, Steve Rogers, he does plan on winning this war no matter what. And so what he is going to do is he is basically going to use the Bell Curve Project, the Bell Curve bomb. Now remember, the Bell Curve Project means that he has the ability to take away people's powers, and he plans on using that bomb on the people of the Iron to get rid of their powers to win this war. Now, you do have Peter Parker tell Steve Rogers for the plan to work, every single person of the Iron has to be close to the bomb. And so, of course, Steve Rogers does have a plan to get every single person of the Iron around him so that he'll be able to set off that bomb and to hopefully win this war. And so getting into the last chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with Iron Man and She-Hulk trying to get away, which of course they're able to get outside once again. But of course now their new goal is to get back to the surface to tell everyone that they have been played by the Skrulls. That is their next goal, and hopefully they can do that very soon. But of course, into the 5th chapter, we can tell that basically right now the war is getting out of hand. And on top of that, I do want to mention that Steve Rogers, he does have a Hulk. Now, this Hulk is not Bruce Banner. Matter of fact, this Hulk is Wolverine. And actually, we find out later on in this book, but I feel like I should go ahead and say it now, that this Hulk is just Wolverine hulked out. And that is it, really. But getting back over to the Iron, we do see that the Winter Soldier is doing what Iron Man told him to do, to basically take charge, to basically be the person in charge. And so with that being said, right now, you have the Winter Soldier right now telling every single soldier, every single hero that's on his side to get out there and to fight against the Blue. Now, that is the moment we come to find out another Iron Man suit is flying away, which of course means that Iron Man had called that suit. But getting back over to She-Hulk and Iron Man, you do have the two agree that they're going to split up, because right now you're going to have She-Hulk basically go find the leader of the Skrulls to bring that leader in, because that leader was the one who had shot Miriam Sharp earlier in this video, while you have Tony Stark go back to the surface and try to end the war. And so as soon as they kiss and say goodbye, and you have Iron Man take his new armor suit and fly to the sky to hopefully stop the war, you have Steve Rogers see Iron Man. And of course, you know what that means right there. Steve Rogers wants to take Iron Man down because Steve Rogers has no idea that both sides are being played. And so with that being said, with Steve Rogers, when he sees Iron Man, he sees Iron Man as a target that needs to be taken down, a target that needs to be removed right now to win this war. And so you do have Steve Rogers tell Hulk to throw him into the sky to actually fight against Iron Man to hopefully win this war. And so, of course, it does lead into another battle between Iron Man and Steve Rogers. Now, with that being said, though, this battle actually doesn't take that long. And the reason why it doesn't take that long is because this is Tony Stark trying to inform Steve Rogers that they both have been played by the Skrulls. He needs to know. Now, with that being said, though, you do have Tony Stark actually call over Emma Frost, because apparently she is the only X-Men character to choose his side. The rest chose Steve Rogers' side. But either way, though, the reason why he called Emma Frost, because she is a powerful psychic. She has the ability to take the information that Tony Stark knows and share that information with Steve Rogers. And so, of course, we do see her being able to share that information with Steve Rogers to inform him, hey man, listen, both sides are being played. They're both being played by the Skrulls. We need to work together to end this war, but to also stop the Skrulls. And that is the moment you have Steve Rogers tell Tony Stark that he actually does have a plan to stop this war and to get rid of the Skrulls as well. And that is the moment we kind of find out that Steve Rogers' plan is to use the bell curve bomb, because remember, the bell curve bomb has the ability to take away people powers. And so, of course, they're going to throw that bomb into the divide as a way to get rid of the Skrulls. But here comes the problem, though. Wolverine Hulk was the one to throw that bomb, and with him throwing the bomb actually got damaged. And with the bomb getting damaged, that means that Tony Stark has to fix it, and Steve Rogers must protect Tony Stark while he tries to fix it. But here comes the problem, though. As soon as they arrived, they are attacked by the Skrulls, and then you have Tony Stark tell Steve Rogers the bomb is fixed. But here comes the big problem, though. They are trapped by the Skrulls, and so if they do set the bomb off, the bomb is going to kill Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. And the reason why, because the bomb has to explode before it can actually begin the process of taking away people powers. And with Steve Rogers and Tony Stark so close to the bomb, when it explodes, they are going to die with the bomb. And so, of course, that is the moment you have Steve Rogers tell Emma Frost to tell every single fighter in the battlefield what in the world was going on, which of course was the Skrulls have been playing both sides. But either way, Emma Frost then tells every single person to go into the divide as a way to save Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. But in reality, the reason why they're doing this is because you have Tony Stark and Steve Rogers realizing they're going to die because of the bomb explosion. But on top of that, they'll be able to take away the powers of the Skrulls, but to also take away the powers of the heroes as well. And if they do that, they can actually end the war and begin a new age for this country, a country coming together once again. And so you do have Tony Stark set off the bomb. It does explode, killing both Tony and Steve. Of course, the Skrulls and the heroes are all depowered because of the bomb. And of course, our heroes are able to kind of capture the Skrulls, but to actually end this war. And the heroes are no longer heroes. It's a new age, a new beginning for this earth. And so to kind of wrap up this story, we actually pick up 2 months after the Great War, 2 months after the bomb went off, 2 months after the death of Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, which of course led into a new beginning for this earth. And of course, the heroes have begun the process of actually bringing the two nations together once again. And on top of that, Peter Parker is able to actually see Mary Jane and their daughter as well to begin a new life together. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.